पंजाबी नैशनल टैलीविजन ते आप जी का स्वागत है। मनजीत सिंह फेरुमन वालों आप जी नूं प्यार भरी सत श्री अकाल। दोस्तों अज मसाला वॉक रेस्टोरेंट दे विच पहुंचे हैं। इत्थे एक बहुत अहम मीटिंग होनी है। NDP दे जिहड़े प्रोविंशियल लीडर ने अल्बर्टा दे नोटली उन्होंने एथनिक मीडिया की प्रैस कॉन्फ्रेंस बुलाई है, जिस विच अल्बर्टा दे जिहड़े लोग ने उन्हां दीयां वख-वख तरह दीयां समस्यावां उन्हां बाबत गलबात होवेगी। कुछ सवाल जिहड़े आ वो एथनिक मीडिया वालों पूछे जाणगे, जिन्हां दा जवाब असीं आस करते हैं कि नोटली होनी सानूं देणगे और उन्हां सवालों के जिहड़े जवाब आ असीं तुहाडे तक पहुँचाउण दा यतन करांगे। हुण असीं अंदर चलदे हां। नोटली होनी रेडी ने ते उन्हां दे जिहड़े आ विचार भी सुणदे हां ते उन्हां दे कोलों सवाल भी पुछांगे जिहड़े कि तुहाडीआं रोज़मर्रा दी जिंदगी दीआं समस्यावां नाल संबंधित होणगे जी।
Thank you so much, Desvir, for that introduction, and thank you, of course, Christina, for being here as well. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I'll make a few introductory comments, and I really look forward to really answering your questions, because that's why we're here, is to give you a chance to interview me, basically. But let me just say, beginning, of course, by acknowledging that we are here on Treaty 6 territory, and to acknowledge the Métis people of Alberta who share a very deep connection with this land. So I'm going to start with the UCP's recent budget. I call it a no-help budget, because there is frankly no help for families and small business owners embedded within that budget. Only the UCP could have historic, soaring commodity prices that they had nothing to do with generating, just to be clear. It's as a result of world oil prices, but nonetheless, only they could have these kinds of soaring commodity prices and still find new ways to disappoint hardworking Albertans throughout this province. The budget should have been an opportunity for our province to begin healing the scars of the pandemic by supporting families, repairing our economy, and reinvesting in our very stressed providers of frontline services. But on the contrary, what the budget actually is yet another example of why Albertans cannot trust this UCP government. So the strategic plan itself that came along with the budget made no mention at all of the high cost of living that is confronting Alberta families in every corner of this province. And as a result, it provided no plan to address those challenges. Now, just last week, Statistics Canada provided a report on inflation, and they reported that the inflation rate now is the highest it has been in 30 years, since 1991. And their budget does not acknowledge that inflation rate at all, and it underestimates it by almost one half. Now, still, the government, even in the face of inflation, which we know hurts low and middle income families and small business owners more than anybody else, this government insists on raising costs and making things worse, much, much worse. Families continue paying more under the UCP. One way that happens is through their bracket 3 policy. I'm sure many of you remember this. This was something that Jason Kenney campaigned against throughout the early part of his career, and he called it a lot of names. But basically, it's a tax on inflation. And as a result of bringing in this tax on inflation, that was one of his first actions soon after getting elected, we are now at the point where over the current fiscal plan that the budget was included with the budget this year, Alberta families will pay almost $1 billion more in income tax than they would otherwise. This alongside the fact that profitable corporations, which are making more, big corporations are making more than they have in gosh knows how long, they are paying significantly less. And this kind of thing has real consequences. This year alone, the average family of 4 will lose about $500 in income. The average seniors couple will lose about $750 in income. And the average person who receives AISH, which is Alberta Assured Income for the severely handicapped, and that's, people that are, in wheelchairs, you're paralyzed from the neck down, you have long-term developmental disabilities or those kinds of issues. Those people will actually see themselves lose about $3,000 a year in purchasing power as a result of the changes made by Jason Kenney and the UCP. So he's taxing inflation, he's making money off of the cost of living crisis. Finally, last thing I'd like to talk about before we move on is the issue of racism and growing hate crimes in Edmonton and across Alberta. Fact is, we have to take real action to stop this. It's not enough to be not racist ourselves, but everyone, all Albertans, must be anti-racist. And I would argue that all the current government has done so far is to pay lip service to the problem. Last year we took a different approach. We, for several months, held wide-ranging consultations with community leaders across the province, and we published a report on what we heard about racism in Alberta and how to put a stop to it. Jasveer, as our multiculturalism critic, played a critical role in that. The report itself is online at our website, albertasfuture.ca, and I urge you to read it. But I will say that within that report, there was a real call for the government to start collecting race-based data so that we can be sure that our public services are designed in a way that serves Alberta equitably. And so what we can say is that our MLA for Edmonton Centre, David Shepherd, will be introducing legislation later this week, introducing a bill that we'll be asking the UCP to support to ensure that we do, in fact, move forward on collecting race-based data. Every now and then we hear the UCP promising that kind of thing, but they have not acted. They have not moved. This is where we put their assurances to the test. Will they vote for this bill? They should. And if they don't, I think we can all understand that with them there's just a lot of promises but not a lot of action. So those are two announcements that I wanted to bring to you today and to make to you today. As you can see, we are here, we're ready to lead, we're ready to take over government once again. And most importantly, right this moment, I, along with my colleagues, Jasveer and Christina, are happy to take any of your questions.
It's Manjit Singh, representing Punjabi National TV and newspaper. So my question was prepared in the morning, early morning, but later on somehow it's answered by Justin Trudeau and our NDP leader Jagmeet Singh. As you know, they agreed on a confidence and supply deal today. So they said we will support you on confidence motion and budgets. And in lieu of that, Liberal government will work on 3 promises which were made by just NDP in last 2 platforms. One was the dental program, universal pharmacare, and affordable housing. So my question from you is, as a NDP leader from Alberta, so what are your stand on these 3 crucial issues related to these common people?
Absolutely. Well, let me just say that I think that as a New Democrat, I absolutely agree that expanding public health care and publicly funded health care, we know dental care is a critically important part of public health care, expanding public dental care, expanding pharmacare, and of course growing affordable housing. These are critically important issues and they benefit Albertans. And so I'm very glad that the NDP has been able to move forward on securing these real, tangible benefits to regular folks and regular families throughout the province of Alberta. As the NDP leader in Alberta, my first priority will always be to do what's best for Albertans. So this doesn't mean that the Alberta's NDP caucus is somehow tied to the federal Liberal government for the next 3 years, notwithstanding the deal that was made. We are in support of those outcomes, absolutely, and we will do everything we can to make sure they happen. But we will always stand up for the best interests of Albertans, even if that means continuing to debate or challenge the federal government on issues that would undermine the best interests of our province. So, but on those issues, I think they're the right issues, and I think they will make a positive difference in the lives of Albertans.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity. I'm Notley, representing the Union. It's not here. My question to you is, does your party have any roadmap to take the Alberta out of Boston recycle?
We do. We absolutely do. Really great question. Thank you. So the question was, do we have a plan to take Alberta out of our boom and bust cycle? And we sure do. We absolutely need to diversify our economy so that we are more resilient and less reliant on solely one commodity. Because that's why we boom and bust. Because we have no control over the international price of oil. I mean, Jason Kenney is trying to pretend that somehow he did something to bring the price of oil up to $10 a barrel. Not a newsflash to people here. He had nothing to do with that. But the reality is that our economy is too dependent on that. And what we have to do is diversify the economy. So we have a project that we've been working on now for about a year and a half. Because one thing that is true that some people said about our government back when we were in power is that it was sometimes hard for people to get a hold of us and to talk to us about their issues. And so I take criticism seriously and try to take feedback seriously and try to do better. And one of the things that our caucus agreed to do, we talked about, was that we were going to create this project called Alberta's Future. And it's a program where we've been reaching out to Albertans across the province to get their ideas about an economic roadmap going forward that will help us diversify the economy, grow the economy, create more jobs, ensure we have an inclusive and equitable recovery, and make sure that we're more resilient to the ups and downs of international commodity prices in the future. So far we've been able to engage with about 75,000 Albertans. We've had more than 40 town hall and engagement sessions. We've written about 10 different policy papers, everything from hydrogen. We put out our hydrogen paper well before the UCP put out theirs, and ours has a lot more detail in it. Rural internet, bringing up broadband across the province, a post-secondary paper, a paper to, what's that? Geothermal, bitumen beyond combustion, developing the tech industry. We have a number of papers there, and it's all there. And so you can find it at albertasfuture.ca. Just Google it, you'll find it. And I say, don't just go to it to read what we've got. Go to it to tell us what we don't have. Like, I mean, you guys are in the media, it's not your job to do that, but tell your readers and your viewers and your listeners to go to it and tell us their ideas, because we're uploading what people have to say, and we're revising what people think, or we're listening to what people have to say about the ideas that we're putting out there, and we're trying to incorporate that feedback. And that's the point of doing it over such a long time, is to make sure that all Albertans have an opportunity to engage in what you call the roadmap for a better economic future.
First of all, thank you so much for making time to meet with us today. My name is Amy Baton. I'm the bilingual French and English newscast that airs on Diversity TV every Friday, with 300,000 viewers and more. And a few weeks ago, the UCP government launched an initiative called Fairness for Newcomers.
Okay.
Yeah, so my question is to know what's in power. Will you keep it? Will you scrap it? Or will you improve on it?
Yes.
If yes, so what will you be doing?
So I'll start, and then I'll pass it over to Christina to elaborate on it. But generally speaking, let me say that there's a lot of things that we can and should be doing to provide greater levels of support for newcomers in Alberta, especially in terms of ensuring that their pathways to economic participation are as seamless and as open and as welcoming as they possibly can be. And so there's a lot of different things that we can do on that front, whether we're talking about our education system, whether we're talking about training, whether we're talking about communicating about the workforce opportunities that are out there, as well as just general support in terms of settlement services, which frankly have seen cuts and they can be improved. To the extent that what the UCP has promoted is something that's helpful and people in the community say is helpful, you know what, we're not going to get wrapped up in partisan politics. If people are telling us it's helpful and it's working, we'll keep that, because that's not the way we govern. If something is a good idea and it works, doesn't matter whose idea it is. So I'll pass it over to Christina. Yeah.
But the truth is, what we're hearing from people is that it is not working. The government is making a great deal of noise about the Fairness for Newcomers office and the work that they are doing. It has been open for 2 years, and it has not practically helped newcomers in any way. In fact, the government has sent out a survey to all of the professional organizations that are responsible for certification of a newcomer. They've asked them questions, but even as part of that survey, they did not measure how long is it taking for a newcomer to be registered here in Alberta. So the government loves to talk about the Fairness for Newcomers office, loves to promote it, but it is not actually helping newcomers in Alberta. It has the potential to, but they are not living up to the expectations they set. It's very frustrating to watch. My constituency office is just around the corner, and we hear from newcomers who are looking to work in Alberta in their chosen field and are hitting barriers, and the Fairness for Newcomers office has not been able to help them. So I think that this is something that we can improve on and put some real action behind, which we have not seen from the UCP government, although they love to talk about it, but it doesn't enforce, it doesn't help, it hasn't actually taken any measurable steps yet.
Yeah.